Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Beatles Forever. Today, we're going to talk about McCartney II. McCartney II was released on May the 16th, 1980, and it seems like this solo album was done out of a stressful situation, just like McCartney, the first solo album was. The first album came out when Paul and the Beatles were coming to an end, and Linda, Paul's wife, urged him to create music and begin a new music career. McCartney II came out around the time Paul and the band Wings decided to disband. I guess those solo albums were a distraction from all the chaos that was going on. This album was not received well by the critics at the time because Paul was doing things totally different than his usual music. He has synth pop, electronica, and new wave, but years later the album became a cult favorite. And what did John Lennon seem to think of the album? And John stated, "I don't follow what they do now," John said. Somebody asked me what I thought of Paul's last album, and I made the remark like I thought he was depressed and sad, but then I realized I hadn't listened to the whole darn thing, I'll just say. John may have been referring to Waterfalls from McCartney II. According to Salon.com, John was living in Cold Springs Harbor in New York, and he liked to be drived around the neighborhood by his assistant. One day he heard Paul on the radio, and he said, "F a pig, it's Paul," he explained, and sure enough, it was the song Coming Up, McCartney's latest single. To Lennon's ears, it was simply infectious. Indeed, while he had tended to dismiss much of Paul's recent work as empty-headed instances of bubblegum pop, this new tune had truly caught his imagination. Quite suddenly, Lennon found himself entranced by the staccato beat of McCartney's new sound, and for the life of him, Lennon couldn't get Coming Up out of his head. "It's driving me crackers," he said as he experienced the jarring return of the old competitive energies of the Beatle-era songwriting rivalry with McCartney. Paul's record kick-started John to start recording again, and Paul should be flattered by the compliment. The first song on the album is Coming Up, and I remember hearing this song all over the radio in 1980. It's a catchy song, and most listeners thought so too. And Paul said, "I originally cut it out on my farm in Scotland. I went into the studio each day and just started with a drum track. Then I built it bit by bit without any idea of the song and how it was going to turn out. And after laying down the drum track, I added guitars and bass, building up the backing track. I did a little version with just me as the nutty professor doing everything and getting it into my own world like a laboratory. The absent-minded professor is what I like when I'm doing those. And so you get into yourself. It's weird, crazy, but I liked it." What's not to like about this song? It has a great hook. And Paul also experimented with his voice, and that's why it has a bit of an echo to it. He said he used so many tricks that he doesn't remember them all. The video of the song has Paul dressed as a young Beatle Paul, and then a guy that looks like Buddy Holly, and Hank Marvin from The Shadows, and Ron Mall of Sparks, a drummer inspired by John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, and others were just comic relief, as Paul put it. The video is fun to watch as well, and so is the song to listen to. Next up is Temporary Secretary. This is the second song from the album, and Paul used the sounds from a synthesizer to sound like a space typewriter. Paul thought of the song as a joke. Instead of needing a permanent secretary, the man in the song just needs a temporary secretary. This song, you have to be in the mood for. The first time or two I heard it, I didn't like it, but time has made me more fond of it. It's a catchy song, just like Coming Up. And this is in the genre of electropop, and the song does stay on your mind after hearing it. The next song on the album is called On the Way. According to Paul, I put down a drum track and some bass, and that was that, and sat around for a month or so, and then the day before I was going to go back to it, I had seen Alexis Corner on a TV program about the blues, and I thought, oh, I've got to do something like that because it's kind of music I like. So that's how this one came about. And it's funny how you can hear or see something that you watch that can inspire you to create something that's equal or better than what you saw or heard. So this is what happened with Paul. He's in the rock blues groove here, and it's a nice song. Next up is Waterfalls. Paul slows things down a bit with this song. He's in his genre here with the soft rock sound, and this one's a ballad. Paul and plays only 3 instruments here: a Fender Rhodes electric piano, a synthesizer, and a little bit of an acoustic guitar. Paul can write memorable songs, and this one is one of them. Next up is Nobody Knows. According to the Beatles Bible website, with On the Way, Nobody Knows, this was inspired by the British television series on the blues, The Devil's Music, which was presented by musician Alexis Korner. And then Paul states that this came out after watching the blues series. I'm a big fan of a lot of the blues players. And one of the funny things is for me that in the blues you'll get what is supposed to be a 12-bar blues, and then you get odd timings coming in. On many blues records, they're never exact. So on this track I do the same thing, and that's the basic inspiration behind it. And I really like this bluesy rocking song. Paul keeps the listener tapping his toes along with the music. It isn't as experimental as his other songs, but it is a great addition to the album. Next up the song is called Front Parlor, and this song sounds like there's a lot going on, but Paul's only playing keyboards and drums. According to the BeatlesBible.com, Paul said, "That was the first thing I did on the album, and it was done in the front parlor of an old farmhouse. It was empty at the time, so we just brought the recording machinery in and used the kitchen as an echo chamber. It was a big echoey kitchen, so I didn't have to use echo or any gimmicks on the sessions. I had to make do. I just have to stand in this big kitchen with a snare drum and belt it, and that's how I got the echo snare. And this little front parlor, which still has the old wallpaper on it and a little fireplace, was where the main track was recorded, so I called it Front Parlor." And this song kind of reminds me of an ABBA song, because it's got that European flair to it, I would say. I like it, and my bird Rocky, he started chirping, and so I give this song 2 thumbs up. Next up is called Summer Day Song. Paul had listened to a classical song before going into the studio, and he came up with this majestic song. He uses a flute mellotron just like in the days of the Beatles, and I love how well Paul can experiment and come up with a dreamy song like this. Next up is called Frozen Jap. This song is an instrumental, and it had that oriental sound to it. Paul said he couldn't think of a good name for the song, so it ended up staying the title he had originally thought of. While I don't really particularly like the title that he came up with, I do like the Asian sound of the song, and it has a bit of a disco beat going on with it too. Next up is a song called Boogie Music. This is an up-tempo song recorded during the experimental sessions for the Paul McCartney second solo album. And Boogie Music was inspired by Raymond Briggs' children's book called Fungus, the Boogeyman. And this song has that sound of early rock and roll, and you can picture the band on stage with everybody dancing around to the beat. I love the sound of early rock and roll, and this song is a good one. Next up is called Dark Room. According to the BeatlesBible.com, McCartney wished the sessions for McCartney II to be light and full of improvised, but with the result that many of the songs were frivolous and lacking hidden depth. A Dark Room is no exception, and it featured a mantra-like chant at its heart. It wasn't anything to do with Linda and the dark room where she develops her pictures. Actually, somehow I just heard the word dark room and thought it had lots of connotations. It could be a dark room, a photographic dark room, or just a room which is dark. You know, a fellow saying to a girl, "Come to my dark room." It's a bit like, "Come, let me take you to the Casbah," kind of thing. So I thought of this double meaning, and it's just a chant that says, come on to my dark room. And then I added a sort of atmosphere thing in the background, and that's it. It's supposed to sound like a sort of freaky dark room or something. That was Paul McCartney explaining his song. And even though this isn't about Linda, somehow it seems like it could be. I could see how it could have many interpretations. It could be more memorable if the song had been longer. And then next up is One of These Days. And this song is one that Paul would do as a Beatle, a Wings member, or as a soloist. Paul has great skills with melody, and this song has it. Paul ends the album on a mellow note, making the listener relax and enjoy the song. McCartney II is Paul doing the unexpected, going to the different music genres, synth pop, new wave, and electronica. It was released in 1980, and at that time, it was probably a huge shock to Paul's regular fans. I know it was really my cup of tea at that time, but the more I've heard it, the more I like it. So time has proven that this album is a good one. It hooks in the listener, and you can enjoy all the experiments Paul was doing. This album pairs well with the first solo album, McCartney. Each was created in times of trouble, and it gives Paul a chance to try something new and reveal his many talents. Well, I thank everybody for tuning in to The Beatles Forever. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe, and please check out below in the video for links to Amazon for Paul McCartney items related to this article. And I hope everybody has been having a good day, or you've had a good day. And please tune in again soon for another episode of The Beatles Forever. And have a great day. Bye.